I'll call this meeting of the Brown County Commission to order. Commissioner Sutton, would you lead the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First on the agenda, we're going to discuss the Spillman update. How are we coming on that, guys? Rocking and rolling?
Yep. I was thrilled with it.
I'll be all right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, just a real brief recap, I guess, for those not familiar with what we're talking about today. The 911 call center uses a software that's called Motorola Spillman. We went live with that in early 2013, and there are numerous interfaces to it, a data management end of it, as well as a call verification and mapping component. And what we're talking about today is that call verification and mapping component. We are trying to get to a new form of verification and mapping called geo-verification. Since that became available about 3 years ago for us to update to, we've been working towards that. It's been a big project to do so. The goal with geo-verification is just a higher accuracy of verifying calls, higher accuracy of verification when calls come into the call center, as well as better mapping functionality for plotting where those calls are coming from and pushing that out to mobile responders. So basically it's a lot of data updates and data creation that's needed for this project to take place. As I said, we've been working toward that for about 3 years. There's a company called Geocom that is the sole vendor that reviews the data on behalf of Spillman and helps to update it, as well as let us know if there are errors, things that we need to fix on our end, so that way we can proceed with the update. If Geocom doesn't sign off on it, the update doesn't happen. So where we're at right now is we entered into a contract with Geocom in July of 2019, and the initial completion date for getting all the data reviewed and edited and re-reviewed, and then to get the actual software updated and live and running in the call center, that date was the end of 2019. The reason we were pushing for that date was because of compatibility issues with our older GIS software, with Windows 10, as well as with the Spillman. Due to some delays in getting the data to Geocom for review, I guess I'll preface in saying that we sent them about 30 data layers. About 12 of those are critical for the Spillman update. They were able to go through and review, make some additions to, and verify, I think it's 9 of those so far. So 9 of the 12 are done, but the biggies are still left. The address road layer and the address points. And the address points is a new layer that we've been working on for 3 years. So where we're at right now is a little bit of a holding pattern in trying to get as accurate as possible of an address point and road layer to Geocom, so they can not only review it for accuracy, but then review it against other data, like our Master Street Address Guide, or MSIG for short, and also the alley call base. So there's really, the way calls work is when somebody places a call, there's a alley phone base that basically it has to check against a Master Street Address Guide and say, okay, is this call part of the Brown County call center region? Yes. And it has to verify first against that. Then it has to look for, as it currently does, against road data, and look for a road segment that call would verify against, 123 Main Street, for example.
It's a reconciliation process
and
to
then
make sure that they match.
And then it would plot it on the map based off of where along that road that number would fall. The new verification actually is more accurate, and it looks for a single address point that would match with the call that comes in. And so we're talking some 19,000 address points for Brown County, including the incorporated areas, each of those with different pieces of data on it that would describe what kind of address it is in more detail, give a landmark name if known, such as McDonald's, that sort of thing.
What's the third layer? You said 9 of the 12.
Well, the MSEG, I guess I'm referring to is that third layer, really, I guess, that still needs to be worked on. And so the second page here, I guess, we'll come back to the timetable. So basically, our new completion date for when we're hoping to have the data review done is by around the 1st of April. And so it was about a 5 to 6 month process initially from the time we submitted data to the time that we could get it reviewed and completed, get it scheduled, get the update done. Since we really didn't even get started on this project, getting known issues fixed in the address points and such, and still late December, that puts us about 5 months now into 2020 for getting this done. So I would say at the earliest we're looking at a June 1 update, and that could push back depending on what's found in the MSEG. Page 3 is a status report that GeoCom actually sent me yesterday. It was good timing. Shows the different phases of the project to date and gives a little more detail about where we're actually at in the review process. The first one is the MSEG, Master Street Address Guide, to the road center layer. That one has the lowest percentage of accuracy and was probably my biggest concern coming into this project. That could be relatively easy to clean up and raise that percentage up to a 95 plus. That could take a lot of time. We're not going to know until we get the rest of our data submitted to GeoCom so they can run it against the MSEG and see if the new corrected data fixes some of the problems that they're showing. I have a feeling it'll fix some, but it's not going to raise that percentage a lot, and there's going to be quite a bit of work that needs done to the MSEG to get that updated and where they need it to be. I think a 95 plus is what they're looking for. The alley, or that's again the phone records to the road street center line, is 95 plus, so I think we're sitting very good there. That means that right now in the call center, when a call comes in, it should be hitting 95 plus on our road center line verifying. The issue where I think we have some verification problems in the call center is that when those calls come in, they're not verifying against the MSEG, so they're getting kicked out before they even get a chance to verify against our road layer. The alley, the site, that would be the phone records to the address points. The new layer that's being created is about 78%. That will definitely go up once we get the edited data pushed out to them, the main points layer that we've been struggling with. And so where we're at right now is basically GeoCom said they're in a standstill waiting on us to get them that data. Of the original issues that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, there are, I think on the last page I made some notes, about 35 address issues that I know about right now. Doesn't mean more couldn't pop up as I continue reviews, but 10 of those were issues of the existing 200 or so that needed to be looked at, and then about 8 are pending some future action. So for now, those are just going to have to wait until we make some decisions on addressing in particular areas. And then 17 are some new ones I just found in Groton within the last week, just doing more of a fine-tooth comb through the Groton area. A lot of those are just duplicate addresses where a parcel gets split and the same address still remains on, the original parcel plus the new part they got out of it, and just needs a new address assigned on maybe the original parcel. So some of those aren't going to be too hard to resolve, but there's still, some 35 issues to resolve. Really where I'd like to be in the timeline is, if if not by the end of this week, the beginning of next week, get this data pushed off to GeoCom so they can do their re-review, run everything again, and then get back to us with, I guess would be phase 3 is now going in, making changes to the MSEG, making additional changes to the data, and so on, and moving things forward. So again, coming back to the original schedule on page 1, if we can get stuff to them by the middle of the month here, then hopefully they'll get back to us by the end of the month, beginning of March at the latest, with that full list, and give us time, you know, to work and resubmit that. You know, it's going to be tight regardless, getting all this done by April 1. I mean, I expected it to be you know, a 3-4 month review and fixed process to begin with, and this is no different, even though it's all pushed back. It could get pushed back further if we have significant things to do with the MSEG. But the roads are in good shape, the address points are coming together and they're going to be in good shape. All the other layers that I've submitted are already verified. Really the biggest gray area is the MSEG. And so we'll just have to see what they tell us we have to fix on that.
So with 19,000 points throughout the county, we have 35 issues right now. That doesn't sound too bad.
35 known issues is not
And
too bad.
17 of them you've just discovered in Groton?
Right, and again, a lot of those, you know, we've already fixed numerous, but a lot of these are some duplicate addresses
Sure.
and such, you know, so they're not real tough ones to resolve.
Okay.
It's just a matter of getting them resolved.
Yeah,
Right now,
so
we
to
just
get
gotta
where
keep
we want to
driving
be, does that
forward.
involve just setting aside a day or an afternoon to, maybe we coordinate with planning and zoning and you, and we
Well,
have a day
it's-
where we can all get that done, or
It's
what do you
more in a
need?
day or an afternoon.
Okay.
This is the process. I'd say between now and April 1st, it's designating time to that.
Yeah.
I mean, and if it doesn't take all of that time, so be it, but basically saying this is our priority until GeoCom approves us to get on Spillman's schedule. It needs to be a #1 priority is what
Sure.
it needs to be. And I can continue to put stuff into the GIS as I have been. The address assignment and changing in the MSEG is currently under the 911 coordinator under Scott Bader, so I guess that's going to come down to a commitment from Scott's office to say that whatever it takes, we'll drive this forward and get it done. That's what I guess we hope for.
And do you have those issues, Scott? Are you aware of the specific ones we need to work on? Do you have that list of, looks like 18 and now 17 more that are new? Have you gotten those, or you kind of know what we need to do?
If it's the ones in Groton, we do.
Okay, those 17.
Oh, that other list I emailed you last week that had
Oh,
the
yeah.
10 on it. So, yeah, he's got them all. Yeah.
Okay. Do you need anything more from Scott Madsen to do those, or do we need to, so we're right where we need to be?
Yeah, we have the list and we're working on them.
Okay.
You think
Good.
by the end of this week, maybe we'll have those?
Probably.
Okay. So then, I won't know how soon GeoCom will get us back, you know, the review list. It might be very quick, it might take a couple weeks, but then it'll just be a commitment on doing whatever's needed to get that MSEG up to a 95% or whatever their approval needs to be. And if there's additional work needs done to address points, that they flag some other errors, that we continue to work on that.
Sure.
And again, as long as Scott's committed to it, and as long as I'm committed to it, and everybody who has their part in it does their part, I think this timeline is doable, but it's important to keep committed to it.
Sure. Well, and sometimes emails go by the wayside, so I know you're afraid to visit your office, but just to swing over and ask, how are things going? Is there anything I can help with? If you guys could work your offices together, I think we'll get there a little quicker, too. Any questions from commissioners?
And it obviously does evolve, you know, as evidenced by the fact that 17 other ones popped up in Groton. So as you knock some down, some others are going to pop up probably. So you just need to continue to communicate on getting it done.
You know, the big thing is just timeliness at this point, that if I flag stuff, that, you know, Scott and Ron can try to look at those right away and get back to me. And that way I can get those resubmitted. As long as, again, you know, this is this is my top priority in my office. I mean, I've got other stuff too, but this is my top priority, and we just need to stay on top of this so it doesn't get pushed back further. I know there's a lot of consequences in the 911 center if it continues to get pushed back further.
Yeah, we need that software update bad, so. And it's not just, it doesn't affect just the 911 center, it affects our jail, our deputies, everybody's on Spillman, so it affects across the board. Fire, PD, sheriff, jail, all of them, so we're kind of at that critical point, we need to get it done sooner than later, so.
Sure.
I guess that's kind of our push for commitment, just so we can get it done.
I think we've got some safety issues for not only the citizens, but the emergency responders. You know, if they get sent to a wrong address by the way it works now under the current system, you know, I think we're putting people's lives in danger. And so the reason I guess I asked for this meeting this morning was we need to get a commitment, and we need to stick with that. And if we set a timeline, say like Friday, we have to ensure that we have that information by Friday, because we've already invested a lot of time and money and effort into this upgrade, and we're kind of at a standstill, and we just need a commitment that they will be providing the information that's necessary. That's all we're asking for.
And Scott, if you need any help in planning, because I know you have a meeting next week and we can't push off all our other duties that we have, and we have 3 other big priorities that your office has been working on, so I know you're getting pulled in every other direction. If you need to pull in some extra help from other departments, feel free to do that. I understand the importance of this, but we also have been pushing you in a lot of different directions with legal priorities, ordinance priorities. Other questions?
So if we end up with a lot of stuff that needs done on the MSEG, you feel you guys can tackle that as well? Okay.
And it will be a priority? That's what you're saying? Okay.
Other questions? All right, well, thank you for the update. Go team.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
All hands
Good
on
luck.
deck.
All right. It all falls together.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda, we're going to talk about employee holiday policy and the overtime policy. How are you, Erica?
Good morning, I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Good.
Okay, I have a couple updates here for you guys. We'll do the holiday one real quick. Four on that side, and I'll do 2 on this side. This is the updated new version. I sat down with the jail last week, we went through it. What we agreed on is, and I put examples in there just because payroll purposes, it's easier to see examples than to just put the wording in there and, yeah. So for full-time employees, what we added is if they don't work any hours on that holiday, if they work an 8-hour shift, they're going to get 8 hours for that holiday. If they work a 10-hour shift, they're going to get 10 hours for that holiday. That way they don't have to go and pull 2 hours out of their holiday bank if they're only getting 8 hours for a 10-hour shift. So that was the compromise there. Everything is still going to get paid out at regular. They wanted stuff to go back into vacation. I said vacation is hard to put back in because our part-time employees.
Time out. I don't think this says that. It says, example, 10 hours worked on a holiday at 1.5 time plus 8 hours holiday at regular pay.
That's if they work.
Okay.
So if you go to the first example there, it says 0 hours worked on a holiday.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. So yeah, they would get 8 or 10 hours depending on what their shift is. But if we were to put these hours, like say for example the 10-hour one, if they worked 10 hours on that holiday, they used to get 8 hours into their vacation or paid out regular, depending on how the department head wanted to handle it. I want to stay away from putting that back into the vacation just because we have the part-time employees who come in who will work because they have a full-time job currently. They may have that day off as a holiday, so they're coming over to the jail to work a full-time position at the jail on their holiday.
Which we need them to do.
Correct. And they don't have a place to put those hours. if we were to put them into vacation. So we want them to we just want to pay it out. That way we don't have to worry about banking. And plus, we have some employees who currently can't use the current vacation hours that they have. They're maxed out. And so they're just going to end up losing hours if we continue to give them hours. And then the other one that was added was down under the part-time employees. If they do not work any hours on the holiday, they do not get any hours of holiday pay. They have to work that holiday to get that holiday pay if they're a part-time employee.
So the change made from what we did last week was we bumped everybody regardless of what they work, they get the 8.
8 or 10.
8 or 10.
Yes. Well, if they work, they get 8. If they don't work, they get 8 or 10, depending on what their shift is.
Does that happen very often where you're only working 2 days on a holiday, like a 6 to 2 shift, and you get 8 hours of holiday, even though you only work 2 on that day, plus the day off, for the most part?
I don't think so. That 2-hour scenario would be, say, if, and this is kind of the example that Mark and Dave gave last week, if they were working the Christmas, how it came on a Wednesday this year, so they, excuse me, sent half of their employees home on Christmas Day because they could go down to a skeleton crew on Christmas
Gotcha.
Day. So that's kind of where that 2 hours, 2 hours would come into play.
Sounds good. You happy with it?
I'm happy with it, yes.
Kind of a reverse on-call. You're scheduled, you come in, we don't need you, do you want to take it off? Yes, it's voluntary. I mean, they could stay if they wanted to.
Correct. Correct.
I'm scheduled, I planned on working unless you don't need me, and if you don't need me, I will be happy to go.
Yeah. Correct. Correct. Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Okay, questions for Erica on this one? So was this the one we had passed last week that we need to revamp? We did one and then we had
We need to
some-
pass this one. We need to pass this one just because of the changes to
Gotcha.
the 0 hours, yeah. So this one was a couple weeks ago that we passed it. They came in just because of how some of their employees, the way it was previously written, if they had the day off, they only got 8 hours, and they were going to have to pull 2 hours from their vacation bank to make up for those 2 hours on their scheduled day off. So that's why we put the 8 or 10 hours depending on what their shift is. Gotcha. If they have that day off.
So if they are scheduled 10s, and it's conceivably possible, because we talked about the scenario, and there's examples where they put a flat 80 hours on, regardless if they're 8s or 10s, this doesn't put that ceiling on if it happens that each one of those. But because you're scheduled 10s, you could get a 10.
Correct. Yeah, if you're scheduled 10
Not too bad.
and you have that day off, or it's your regular scheduled day off, you get 10. But if you're only scheduled 8,
Yep.
you get 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I would entertain a motion to approve that change.
So moved.
Moved by Sutton,
Second.
second by Weiss. Any questions on what we're doing? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carries.
Good job getting out of catch-22 there.
Thank you. Okay, the overtime policy. And I did have some feedback from a couple of department heads on this. So I'll let you guys read through it quick, and then I'll kind of discuss what your questions were. Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
it's similar to what I sent out
Yeah,
previously.
same one.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, I read that.
Here's the holiday one. Or that overtime.
And is approval of overtime, is that a verbal approval or is there a written, like is it just?
I would request something in writing from the department head stating, and so are you talking about the
Second-
unique
second
situation?
paragraph, yeah.
Oh, okay, second paragraph.
where it says if the overtime is not approved, it can be designated as unauthorized overtime, which may result in regular pay.
Okay, yep, I would just request something from the department head stating that this person worked overtime, it was not authorized, and their recommendation on what they would like to do with that situation.
Gotcha.
Can that be done in the time accounting system or independently?
We can do it. What we'll do is if they send me, if someone were to send me an email, department head sends me an email, we'll just use Kathy for instance. She sends me an email saying one of her employees worked overtime and it wasn't authorized. What we would do is we would just make sure that when we're approving that time card, that those hours are under that regular pay instead of that overtime piece.
Okay.
Because they were not authorized to work that overtime.
And that's part of the department head or elected officials' responsibilities when reviewing for submission.
Correct.
And that's why it's important that all of this stuff gets put in properly by each employee for their responsibility, so it can be reviewed on a timely basis.
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so in the first paragraph there, the last sentence where it says department heads have the authority to require an employee to work overtime, even if the employee does not prefer to do so. We do have some departments who someone calls in sick, they need somebody to stay. Right now, they can say, hey, who would like to stay? Sometimes everybody scatters like nice. This allows them to say, I need you to stay until we find somebody to come in for this person's shift. You're going to have overtime? Yes, but I need you to stay. So this gives them the authority to do that. So the big thing about this is vacation, sick, emergency leave, any type of leave will no longer count towards overtime.
Good.
When I put in there, unless a unique situation, one of the ones that came out of the sheriff's department is if one of the investigators worked 60 hours the first week, and they're in an 80-hour pay period, and they have 40 hours vacation the next week. They are currently maxed out, so they need to take that 40 hours vacation. To me, I believe that they should be paid that 20 hours of overtime that first week that they worked their butt off in that 60-hour work week. So it'd be 60 hours that first work week, 40 hours vacation that next week. So like pretty much the non-essential staff works on a 40-hour pay period week. The essential staff works on an 80-hour pay period. So that's kind of breaking it down for them, saying, okay, you work 60 hours one week, but you have 40 hours vacation the next week. That additional 20 hours that you worked that first week should be overtime. So it wouldn't be their vacation that's going into overtime, it would be those hours that they worked that would be going into that overtime piece. Or say if we have a Monday holiday like we did, and say we have a blizzard tomorrow, and Dirk's employees work 12 hours tomorrow. That extra 4 hours that they worked on that blizzard day would be overtime, not that 8 hours of holiday pay that they received on that Monday. So it'd just be narrowing it down in those specific or unique situations. And the email will have to come from the department head stating, this is what I would like to do. And then if it's a question where I don't feel that it needs to be approved, I would probably bring it to you guys and say, how do you feel about approving overtime for this? But right now, it's kind of the onus on the department head to judge how their overtime is being spent.
But guidelines are in place then with adoption of this that says if you're working honest to goodness overtime, fine, but we're not stacking vacation and other things in there.
Correct.
In order to create an overtime situation.
Correct. And we're still following the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, where it's a 40-hour work week, and per se they have to work 40 hours that work week before they get overtime.
That makes sense to me, but I don't see that in here. If you were to leave, somebody else might not get that out of here. The situation that you specifically said,
yeah.
the 60 and then the 40?
Yeah.
So you might need an example on the end of this.
Well,
Otherwise this doesn't follow that.
Yep, and that's what we tried putting examples in, and there were so many different scenarios.
Confusing.
Yes. So what I planned on doing is once I have the whole house policy manual done, throwing in just extra sheets of paper behind there and saying, okay, this situation happened on this date, this is how we handled it. Just so there's documentation behind there. So if we do run into that situation again, whether I'm here or not, the documentation is there to say, this is how we handled it last time, this is how we need to handle it going forward.
Gotcha.
They essentially make that like an appendix to the...
Yes, correct.
Unless you got a better way, that's what I term it as well, as appendix to
Yeah, so
show the
my,
examples.
my two little sticky notes of the questions I had from the department heads are gonna be my first notes on my extra sheet of paper.
The appendix, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions on the overtime policy change? Entertain a motion to approve.
Move. Second.
Moved by Pikert, second by Weiss. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next on, thank you, Erica.
You're welcome.
What do
Is
you-
personnel for you?
What are you gonna do next week?
Oh, we're not done there. Commissioner Weiss. Just scratching the surface.
Just checking to make sure, all right.
Yes, the personnel is, yes,
And that's for exec,
yes.
okay. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session for personnel.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Sutton, second by Weiss. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll be in. All right, we are back in session. No action as a
Okay.
result of exec. Let's go to your item.
In minutes from February 4th, there's a correction. Mr. Weiss led the pledge, not Mr. Selhan. And then there also is a clerical error in the 28th we need to correct too.
Move. Second.
Motion from Sutton, second from Pikert. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Claims?
Move. Second.
Moved by Sutton, seconded by Weiss. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
HR report?
Move. Second.
Moved by Pikert, seconded by Weiss. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Auto budget supplement of a state grant to the highway department?
Move. Second.
Moved by Sutton, seconded by Weiss. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Police?
So move. Second.
Moved by Pikert, seconded by Weiss. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Sheriff vehicle purchase?
Move. Second.
Moved by Sutton, seconded by Weiss. And I think it said in there it would be within their budget, right?
Yep.
Yes, it's in their budget and off the state bid.
68,000.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
That's everything we have.
All right. Anything from commissioners?
I gave everybody a copy of House Bill 157. I was contacted by South Dakota counties yesterday. It's dealing with zoning, so if you have a chance to read it over, if you have any comments, get a hold of Wilcox and his people. The understanding SB 157, kind of a cheat sheet, just separates facts from the myths. It was provided by someone, I don't know who put it together, but that's the facts and myths. If you go down and talk to Vader, can you give that to him?
Absolutely. Yep.
He said he had a copy of the bill, but he may not have that.
Okay.
So if you want to read it over, if you have any suggestions or comments, I know it's causing quite a stir in, I know, Yankton County and possibly Grant County, but it was initiated by a working group of people. Wilcox said there were about 20 people at the table in conjunction with the governor's office, so just offer any feedback that you may have to help them work through the process. Jack Heap did the printed copy that I gave you. The comments off to the right were revisions made primarily by Jack Heap, who's somewhat of an expert in this whole arena, so that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Dwayne. Appreciate it. Anything else from commissioners? Anything from those in attendance? All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Pikert, seconded by Sutton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We'll be adjourned until next week. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.